بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Peace and love, y'all. This is Brother Ali. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. Just want to thank everybody for your amazing outpouring of love and support and generosity. Mostly generosity of spirit. But generosity of spirit is not to be overlooked. It's not to be glossed over. There's no way that we should ever feel like, well, if I didn't give money, then I didn't give. To me, generosity of spirit is really profound, And if you've ever been in a situation where things are difficult, so much of what we do as imams, as chaplains, as therapists, as, coaches or guides or mentors or friends or spouses or parents or, teachers or students or, so much of what we do in terms of being together is just sitting and really hearing each other and trying to feel some of what our, fellow human beings are going through. And when somebody says, my heart goes out to you, when that's sincere and when that's real, it's like your heart is better than anything is the best thing that you can offer. It's literally the best thing that you have to give somebody is your heart. And so for those that have done that, it's really been beautiful. You can listen to last week's episode of the podcast if you want to. It's called something like Deported and My Family Separated. The very quick kind of summary of the story is that after living with my wife and 3 daughters in Istanbul for the last 4.5 years, I have this history or this kind of like tradition of traveling with my 16-year-old daughter. And so she came to America with me. I had like a 2-week trip in America, and she was able to come, and we usually travel to see concerts. She really loves all different types of art and movies. It's so eclectic. Movies and music are the 2 things that she loves most. And it's just, she loves everything from like her 2 favorite movies are Kill Bill and The Sound of Music. And she genuinely, it's like we shouldn't watch something like Kill Bill a whole lot just because that's a lot of like violence to pour into our hearts and things like that. But it's objectively a dope movie, Whereas something like Sound of Music is, it's different. So it's not always the things that I would choose, but she shows me so much stuff that I love. And so she and I travel and go to different musical, like concerts. And she's shown me some music that is really dope to me and some performances that I'm like, okay, I see why you're choosing this particular person or group or band or experience. I see why you like it, and it helps me. It gives me a window into who you are. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to bond over, So it's been a beautiful experience. So I had a trip to the US that I had to do in the middle of Ramadan. I wasn't necessarily looking forward to the fact that it was during Ramadan. I've been so extremely busy, and, and Ramadan means a lot to me. Maybe I'll say more about that in a second. But so we did this trip. We traveled all over the country, all over the U.S., just a few different cities in the U.S. It was a whirlwind. It was really taxing, but it was really fun being with her. Came back to Istanbul, and because of a political fight that's going on in Turkey, immigration is one of the hot button issues, and immigrants of all stripes, whether we're talking about people that are considered refugees from Afghanistan or from Syria, or we're talking about people that call themselves expats, people that come from countries that have more money. The country has more money, not necessarily that we have more money, but people that come from the UK or come from Germany or come from America or something like that, the US. Those people are called expats, but really all of us together are something of a political football. And so the processes for applying for residency, for citizenship, for travel visas, for all this kind of stuff, these policies are really getting pushed back and forth, and we're left just kind of hanging in a balance. So after having done everything right, having filed everything legally and on time and gone through all the proper processes and procedures, we traveled back to Turkey with my daughter, and she was deported. She's 16 years old. She's tall and she's like she's always had a very, very deep soul. I mean, this child is just this human being. I mean, she's about to turn 17. I mean, since the time she was born, I mean, this is a child that I've never been disappointed in. This is a child I've never been angry with, to the point where I tell her sometimes, it's okay to disappoint me. Just because you never have doesn't mean that you can't. And it's okay for me to be angry. Like, I've never been angry with you, but just so you know, if I ever am, that's a normal thing between people. But I mean, I've witnessed her, and like, we know her. And, so many people have to struggle. The overwhelming majority of us have to struggle with some imbalance in our nature that that sometimes will prompt us to do more than we should, or say more than we should, or have, a spirit that's not good for us to have. I mean, I have to struggle a lot, and I do know that the Creator made me with a very high capacity for love. But when I'm hurt or disappointed or something like that, or if my fight or flight thing kicks in, it's usually fight. I mean, I can make big messes in my life and in the lives and in the hearts of people around me. I'm really capable of that. I'm also capable of going to extremes with things. I know that. That's my nature, and I have to work to fight against it. And to discipline those parts of myself and try to reach an equilibrium point. This child it does not, from the time that she was born, is not struggling against these kind of like negative traits within herself. They just don't seem to be there. Like, she's just balanced and rooted and beautiful and good. She's just thoroughly good. It's almost like bad things don't even occur to her or something. Now, we know that all human beings have the human condition, which is why I tell her all the time, like, hey, I hope you don't feel like you got to be perfect. You know what I mean? Like, you can be, but I don't think that's what's going on. This is a really amazing child. And she's very understated, soft-spoken. I mean, she can get silly sometimes with me and her mom, or with friends and things like that. And the move to Turkey has been the hardest on her, because my wife and I are converts, and we're adults, and we chose to move to Turkey, to converts to Islam. And the two little ones have been raised in Turkey, and so they're basically Turkish. And I mean, Turkey is an amazing place to be a child. You can really have a beautiful childhood, very simple, but one that really allows for you to be innocent, to maintain your innocence. And, so you don't have to worry about things like safety. You don't have to worry about necessarily being violated. My wife is Black and Puerto Rican, and so, where we come from, children that aren't white are raised feeling like they're less than human, or at least the majority of the society thinks you're less than human. And so you kind of constantly have to fight against that. You constantly, in raising children, it's like, how do I instill in these children that, you're going to get all these subtle messages, and it's not, that's not the case only for people of color, but for people of color, you got like multiple layers. And, my feeling about my country, where I come from, where I was born, where I was raised, is that it's not healthy or human for anybody. It's not a healthy human situation. It's a constant war zone. And I mean, the dunya in general, the world in general, this part of life in general, is about needing to fight for what's right in ourselves and in the world and in our lives and, all of this stuff. But particularly, just the lifestyle and the ideas and the, so much of how we interact with each other. A lot of the traditional human stuff has been lost. And the U.S. and a few other rich nations feel like they're leading the world. But I'm not just talking about this current political climate. I'm talking about the last 400-year project of this quote unquote new world, that what they've actually innovated is a whole lot of destruction of things that are inherently human. Things like, living in tribes, living in clans, living in it with extended families. We can go on and on and on, and sometimes it sounds conservative to people, and it is in some ways, and it's not in others, and then also Islam is just this beautiful balance, because it does have the best of the various sides of all conversations, and so Islam is also deeply, deeply focused on everybody being human and not being dehumanized or demoralized for anything about them, and that justice is really, really very, very central, and generosity and public justice. Dr. Cornel West says justice is what love looks like in public. And so the idea of public generosity, public mercy, public gracefulness, public generosity is really also deeply. And so some people would say, well, that's very liberal, or that's very, right, left wing. And yeah, it is, and it's not, But I will say that, so the children, the two littlest ones, they're growing up going to beautiful Quran schools, and they've got a bunch of friends. They speak Turkish fluently, so they have a bunch of Turkish friends. They also can speak English with we live in a neighborhood in Istanbul where there's a beautiful community of people that have come from other parts of the world for the same reason me and my wife did. It's like we want to be able to live life as Muslims in a way that's beautiful. The cultures of the different Muslim societies they're vastly different from one another. The Turks are not like the West Africans, and not like the Saudis, and not like, they're very, very different from one another. They have Islam that binds them all, but their expressions and understandings of Islam are definitely not all the same. And the cultures are very different. And the culture in Turkey is a very, very beautiful one. It's one where they understand that aesthetics and beauty and art and that type of expression is really important on the spiritual path. And so it's a beautiful place for the two little ones to be growing up. And so, and we have this community where we live in a walkable neighborhood, where you walk to the bakery, you walk to the butcher, you walk everywhere in these old cobblestone streets, and you just see your neighbors everywhere you go. Our kids all go to school together, so they're riding the bus together every morning with people whose, their parents are best friends. Their parents would do anything for each other. All of us would do anything for these children. And then they go to this beautiful school. And, at school they're taught the Quran, but they're first taught the love of the Quran. And the culture around it is when they're starting out, kindergarten, preschool, first grade, don't correct them, don't make it, punitive, don't make it, just we're fostering a love for the Quran in children. And it's a really, really beautiful thing. Now that's, for the adults and for the kids, but for my daughter, she's 16, and it's difficult for her because the language, I think that if she was able to learn Turkish, then she would find probably a lot of, girls that are like her, people that they come from very religious Muslim families, and they're happy for that. You know what I mean? My daughter is totally cool with all of the stuff because for her, it's just normal. It's happy. It's part of her family. You know what I mean? She's never been told there's something wrong with you. And part of this, there's not. You know what I mean? But she falls in with this stuff just perfectly fine. But then she also collects records, and she also went through a period where she was skateboarding a lot, and she went through, she's into photography and filmmaking and, all of the stuff that she's into. It's yes, there's a way for that to be integrated into your family life, into your group, your community life. And for you, like, you're fully supported in that, in your spiritual journey. That your expression should be part of your spiritual journey. And, I've been meaning to do a talk about this idea, this concept that people say that music is haram. I've been meaning to do an episode on that, and maybe I'll do it sooner than later. But we don't have this concept. We don't have this idea. There are certain people that insist on it. We don't. And we have very serious, dedicated, world-class teachers that don't have that opinion and don't have that view. And these are completely legitimate, serious, they're not like on the fringes of the intellectual tradition or the legal tradition. They're not fringe, and they're not, it's not that they're not as strict, or it's not that they're not as serious, or it's not that they're not as legitimate, or, these are people that are highly regarded in some of the greatest centers of learning in the Muslim world. So in any case, I think that if my daughter were able to learn Turkish, but it's a difficult language to learn. And if languages don't come naturally to you, that can be very, very challenging. And so we've been to Turkish language school, and, I've picked up a little more that, like, she and I went together, like we spent all summer going last year. And we picked up as much as we could. But so for her, she struggles, because there's only like one other teenage girl in our community that speaks English. And it just puts like an impossible amount of pressure on that relationship. So it's very difficult for her. But she's adapted, I think, really well to the transition. And hold on. So actually, it's 6 something in the morning here. So let me not be clickbaity. If you're looking for the update, this is it. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. I'm back in Istanbul with my family. Our family is reunited. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. That means I witness that the divine reality is one, and there's nothing to be prioritized in our lives except for Allah. Thousands of mosques in this city. There's a human being in each one of them doing that call for prayer. Right now it's 5:41 in the morning. They do it 5 times a day. Rain, hail, snow, earthquakes. In the middle of the earthquakes, the imams, the muezzins went to the mosques and did the call for prayer. Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. That means I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and that there are messengers of Allah. There are people who are the living embodiments of the message of the divine. And the Prophet Muhammad is the chief among them. But those prophets come from all walks of life. Every single group of people had a prophet that's from that same line of prophets. Now the Imam is saying, Hayya ala salat. That means come alive and come to the prayer. And there are people at 5:40 in the morning that are walking to the mosque now. And I would normally be among them. But I'm only home for like 2 days, and so I'm praying at home with my family. Today in particular. Hayya ala salat. Next you're going to hear Hayya ala al-falah. That means come alive to success, true success. Come alive to true success. Falah. Falah means to reap the harvest. Like come alive and reap the harvest of living a good life, being a virtuous person, being in alignment with the divine, being in alignment with creation. Hayya ala al-falah, and we say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There's no power, there's no motion except for with the divine. They're saying as-salatu khayru min an-nawm. Prayer is better than sleep. Worshipping is better than sleeping. That's what they say there. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. I literally just got up off my couch, came to the balcony, and I'm looking now out at the Bosphorus. It's still dark. It's 6 something in the morning. My daughter's just reminded me that there's a big, beautiful spider web out here, so I'm trying to remember where that's at, because I got my balcony door open. It's lightly raining. If you listen, you can hear the other thousands of muezzins in the background all doing the call for prayer for their neighborhood. It's one of the reasons we moved to this country. One of the many beautiful reasons we moved to this country is to hear the adhan. So we're back home. Our family is reunited. It was extremely difficult. We spent a full week between Amsterdam and Chicago just trying to figure out what to do, you know. So we took my daughter, we tried to come back to Istanbul after traveling, and they deported just my 16-year-old. They said she has to go back to Amsterdam, which is not where we're from. She doesn't have, you know, it's not like we have family there. It's not, and they just didn't care. Like, she was just being sent out to the last place that she came from. And, you know, also they were trying to make her spend the night, and then us, because my first argument was like, you can't just deport her. You know what I mean? She's a child. Like, she, you know, that, like, you can't do that. And it's like these people that get in these situations. And I mean, it's the same. I travel all over the world. You know, border people, police, immigration officers, customs officers. It's like that job represents something very similar. And so there's a few different archetypes within it. There are some people that are actually in that role that are caring and that they're concerned and they're trying to help people, and then they feel like they're there to do good. There are people that are in that job that are just kind of doing their job and they don't really care that much. And then there are people that are there that are absolutely on a power trip. It's very clear that they took that job because, and what they love about it is feeling like they have power over people. You know, this man kept asking me if I was stupid. And it's like, you know, like, you know, like, I never feel like I'm better than anybody, but there are times where people try to elevate themselves over me. And it's like, this person has no idea who they're talking to. You know, like, am I stupid? Well, you know, you work at the airport, you know, and it's just by the blessings of the Creator. But like, I'm flown all over the world because people want to be in a room with me to either see me, you know, practice my art and like get on the microphone and do my thing, basically say words that I wrote, or they just want to be in a room with me so that I can talk to them about what my thoughts and feelings are about any number of subjects. So like, am I stupid? Like, you're asking me if I'm stupid because you're about to deport a 16-year-old child to the country that she's not from. If I hadn't stopped him, if I hadn't argued with him, he'd probably have an international situation on his hands. Like, that could have ended up on the news very easily. You know what I mean? And of course, it's like, but he knows that he's got some power in that moment. He knows that he has the power that the police could come in and separate me from my 16-year-old. The police could do that. And if nobody listens, which they oftentimes don't, and if they don't care, which they oftentimes don't, and if they don't, have anything in them that says, let me look into this, let me see what's really going on here. So first he was going to separate us and send just a 16-year-old child back to Amsterdam. And then the flight didn't leave for 24 hours, and he was going to have her and then us, because I basically said, well, you can't do that. She's a child. So he said, okay, well, then you're going with her. Because my visa, apparently I was good to come into the country and she wasn't, because they changed rules retroactively. Like, we came to Turkey at the same time. We have all of the same conditions. All of our files are together. All of our passports are together. All of our residence visas are filed together. They just changed some rules retroactively. So one thing applied to me and another thing applied to her. So finally I argued like that we could stay together. And then he said, okay, now get out of the office, get out of my office. And like, okay, well, where are we supposed to go? This flight isn't for 24 hours. Just get out. And there's one little kind of corridor where we could stay for the night. And there's no restaurants, there's no stores, there's barely just a few chairs. Like, where are we supposed to be? Where are we supposed to charge our phones? We didn't get our luggage. What are we supposed to do for 24 hours? You know what I mean? This is a 16-year-old girl. What if she needs, feminine products? Like, what's going on here? So then I finally talked him into letting us go to the airport hotel. And thank God I got all these travel points and miles and everything from traveling. And then we went to Amsterdam, and that was where we left off last week. So what happened was that we flew to Chicago on our own dime, and there's a consulate there where you could apply for a special permission visa. We basically spent 3 days getting together all of this paperwork. There was so much stuff that they needed. We printed over 50 pages of paper, all the stuff that they were requesting. It was really expensive. We got it all filed. And then we were told, like, oh, this can take up to 2 weeks, but, the Eid holiday is coming up. And so sometimes people take off. Like, Turks will take 2 weeks off the same way that people take off around Christmas in the West. So she was helpful. I've got to give it up. The consulate director, or the head of the consulate officer, maybe, she was very helpful, and she was very kind to us. And she's a Turkish woman. And she said, yeah, it's become so confusing. She said, I'm getting more and more cases like this. She said, it's become so confusing for people to even know what's possible and how to go about it properly. And I do have to say that, when I posted last week's episode, I usually remove, hater comments, just because, for a variety of reasons. I mean, people come in and drop those comments, and even if you respond to them, they rarely engage. It doesn't really, most of the time, people, like, that's their aim, is like, they just want to get a little bit of their anger out, their venom out, their judgment. To them, that's the end. So, like, they don't necessarily come back. And no matter what, so if you respond to them, the majority of the time, they'll never even read it and see that you responded. Because I'm like, okay, like, I'll have a conversation with people I don't agree with. That's fine. But it's almost never that. There have been people that have said hateful, hurtful things, and I've responded to them with kindness, and they've come back and apologized. There are people that actually, we go back and forth a little bit, and it's like, okay, yeah, we just really don't agree. But the overwhelming majority are people that just drop comments, and they never come back, and they never talk about it, and they never, but there were people that said, well, people need to enter the country the right way. And it's like, you didn't listen, and you don't understand that people want to enter countries the right way. People don't want to just be the overwhelming majority of, like, these families and people. I mean, if you watch season 2 of Mo, you see what his family went through, being displaced from Palestine, and then being moved and shuffled all over the world, and eventually ending up in America and being raised in Houston, and, struggling to get a travel document, to get a passport, to get citizenship in any country in the world for decades. Like, you can work on it for decades without getting it. You just don't know what people go through. And so, yeah, we spent several days. We spent almost a week in Chicago. And she said, either this will happen quickly or it'll take a very long time. So we were working on it on that end. I also put out calls to people that I knew around the world and in different places in Turkey. Like, we had put in our application to renew our residency back in November, and they hadn't even processed the papers yet. They hadn't even looked at our files yet. So my wife is like going in to the offices in Istanbul, just saying, hey, we need you. Like, my husband and my daughter traveled, and now they're saying that we're banned. They banned our daughter for 90 days from Turkey. But if the residence visa gets approved, which it should be, then she can come home, or if this special permission visa comes through. So we're in America, in Chicago, doing everything we can for this special permission visa. And my wife and our friends in Istanbul are doing everything that they can, making phone calls and, talking to people that they know that might be able to look at the case. And like, we're not asking for anything other than for what's right to happen. We did everything we're supposed to do. We applied for everything. We meet all the requirements. We've done everything. Can somebody just put eyes on this and recognize that we should be approved? And so, also it's the month of Ramadan. And the last few years, the month of Ramadan, since living in a Muslim country, the month of Ramadan, I've always loved it. If you go back, to last year and the year before, listen to the episodes that I did about Ramadan, because, it's the one time of year where I usually get the focus, the dedication, the kind of like communal support, the everything to be the Muslim that I wish I could be all year. And I really love it. Like, you'll find that like religious Muslims, practicing Muslims, even Muslims that don't really practice throughout the year, during this month, they start practicing. And you can think that that's hypocritical if you want to, but it's like, you're probably not acknowledging the ways that we all struggle with that. We're all like that in different ways. You know what I mean? If when you get into a certain situation, it's like people go to prison and then they get buff, then they get strong and they lose a bunch of weight. And it's like, yeah, you get in a situation that helps you focus the way that you want to, because you don't have the distractions, you don't have the excuses. It puts you in a situation that supports you being the kind of person that you want to be. And it provides some boundaries and some guardrails that you won't step over. For me, it's part of why I moved to a Muslim country, because there are certain things that I struggle with that, like, I don't struggle the same way if I'm living in a Muslim country surrounded by mosques, and I live in the neighborhood where there's a saintly figure that's buried in this neighborhood, and I consider myself to be his neighbor, even though he died hundreds of years ago. But it's like we all moved here because of this person is here, and the spirit that's in this place. And, you're hearing that beautiful call for prayer 5 times a day. There's certain obligations I'm not going to overlook. I just won't do it. And there's certain things that I'm not supposed to do that maybe I would struggle, and I'm not stepping over that barrier here. So we're here to help me be the person I want to be. But Ramadan is just magical for that. And especially being in a Muslim country, it's like I am just swimming. It's like this is a dream come true. I finally, for that 1 month, am the person that I want to be. And this year just didn't feel like Ramadan in that way. Like, I'm still healing from a surgery. Like, if you listen to a couple episodes back, like, I came into this month getting a double hernia surgery that was really intrusive, invasive, and the healing process has taken a long time. You know what I mean? So I'm still going through that. And then, to have to travel to America in the middle of the month of Ramadan, that's not when I wanted to do that. Initially, the plans that I had made for that trip were initially going to be at a different time of year, and they got moved to Ramadan. And it was someone that fought so hard for this thing to happen that like I could have said no, but I didn't want to. The person that fought for me to be with these students, it got moved, and I would have been pulling the rug out from under the work that she did. So that's why I decided to travel with my daughter. And then we were going to come home and be home. The last 10 days of Ramadan are particularly powerful. And so we were going to be home for the last 10 nights of Ramadan, the last 10 nights and days, and for the Eid. And, then we got deported. And so we spent that time in Amsterdam and in Chicago and in transit. I mean, just days and days of flying to different cities and, being in different places. And on the 27th night of the month of Ramadan, which is a big, big night for us. I mean, well, first I'll say that, it not feeling like Ramadan. One of my friends mentioned to me, I think I said this last week. One of my friends said to me, my brother Chet said, you and your daughter will never forget. Every time Ramadan comes around, you'll remember this particular challenge. And the term Ramadan comes from a root word that means to burn. And what we're told that may have some meaning correlation is that Ramadan, through the fasting and the standing and the praying and the charity and like exerting ourselves in terms of our spiritual practice and religious practice, that it burns off the impurities. We believe that the external forces of evil, shaitan and the jinn, the shayateen, are locked up during the month of Ramadan. And they're let out after the Eid, by the way. So like when we transition out of Ramadan and like back into daily life, we have to be very, very vigilant about the fact that all of these bad habits that we were able to leave, they're going to try to creep back in. All of these good habits that we built that we're going to try to replace them with laziness. We got to really, really fight to maintain, like, okay, the whole year can't necessarily be like Ramadan, but what am I going to keep? You know what I mean? Am I going to go back to these destructive behaviors that I have? Everything that's haram in Islam is destructive to something sacred. And once we see it like that, it's like, okay, this is something that is seeking to, these intoxicants are trying to destroy my intellect. They're trying to destroy my morals. They're trying to make me subservient to them. You know what I mean? Lust, for example, is mocking love. Lust is not wrong because of the enjoyment of intimacy, because Islam is a religion that celebrates intimacy. It's actually a very deeply spiritual and religious thing to have an amazing sex life with people that we share life with. But lust mocks love, and lust mocks real intimacy, because it's just like there's no life connection going on. It's just, people enjoying each other's physical bodies as though that's all we are, And so everything that's haram in Islam is there to protect something sacred. I can't just talk about another person, even if I'm telling the truth, and say bad things about them, because their honor is sacred and my honor is sacred. Honor itself is sacred. And we're not talking about in cases of abuse, because that's a whole different category and different conversation. But the overwhelming majority of us are not abusers, and we're not abusive. We are people that do the wrong thing. We do hurt each other, and we do things that we're not supposed to do. But the reality is that, for us to talk negatively about each other, may Allah forgive us and protect us and ennoble us, and make us use our tongues for what our tongues are for, and use our words for what our words are for, use communication for what it's for, So to go back to those things after Ramadan is a big test, a big challenge, But Ramadan means one of the meanings is that it burns off all the impurities. So the fact that shaitan and the shayateen are locked up during that time, I realized like all these things are still coming up. That's me. Those things have made their way into me. So like all these negative inclinations that come up, it's like that stuff has made it into my own ego, and my heart isn't where it's supposed to be. And that's what I learned about myself during the month of Ramadan. And so it's a time where that's just, I'm used to the last few years especially, to just being able to soar and just swim and drown and float and drink in this like ocean of devotion. And if you hear ocean of devotion in my song, then no, I mean it, and I'm kidding at the same time. It's funny, ocean of devotion. But man, it wasn't feeling like Ramadan. And I realized that Islam is about submitting. And so I did fast most of those days, even while we were traveling. Some of the days you don't have to, and so you choose, and we usually would choose to. Some of the days you just can't. But I didn't fast all 30 days. And that's what was meant for me. That's what was written for me. But the 27th night of the month of Ramadan, we were in Chicago. We went to a gathering at Iman, the Inner City Muslim Action Network. Shout to Rami Neshashibi and Alia Bilal, and shout to my brother Taqi, and shout to all of the beautiful people over there. My a young sister I call my niece, Jenna Sanders, who is the daughter of this amazing man, Haroon Sanders, from the Bay Area. Well, they've lived in the Bay Area. Haroon Sanders is a black brother that's been doing the audio-visual stuff for Zaytuna College and for Sheikh Hamza Yusuf for decades. And incredibly beautiful man. And I don't know his amazing wife, but I know how much he loves his wife. Like sometimes my brothers that love their wives so much, it's like I've never even met her, but I have just such a high opinion of her, just from knowing the brother, just from knowing my man. It's like, and there are people that when people really love their wife like crazy, it's a bonding thing. You know what I mean? So I have brothers here in Istanbul that man, they love their wives, and I know it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not friends with their wives like that. But when I see them, it's like, man, that love and respect is so deep because of the way that they love their wife. Because that's how I am. You know what I mean? Yeah, subhanAllah. Yeah, I don't know if it's right for me to say people's names and stuff, but yeah, the people in my neighborhood are like that. And so many of my brothers around the world are that way. But yeah, so we went to Iman, Inner City Muslim Action Network. Shout to Fanam, the great MC. Man, I could just keep going and going and going with all the great people that we saw there that particular night. But there was a fundraising program, and so we got to be part of that. And I performed, and they asked me to lead the prayer that evening, and all that kind of stuff. 27th night of the month of Ramadan is a big deal for us, and so we went back to the hotel. And a lot of times we'll go to a mosque or something like that and pray all night. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna do this in the hotel room by myself. And, in the hotel room in Chicago, we were in a beautiful hotel. Shout to my dear brother, Dan Chisholm. Dan interviewed me on the podcast some months back. It's called When Fans Become Friends. Dan is a person that hit me up because he was interested in Islam. And there's certain people that they show up in the comments a lot, or they show up at stuff. And I just start having an awareness of who people are. And Dan was somebody like that, but he hit me up about Islam in a way that let me know that no, he's serious. And when people are like that, I will take up a correspondence with them. And we ended up helping him convert to Islam, and we've just become friends, And if you hear the episode with him, you'll hear that he used to have a job where he flew all over the world doing audiovisual stuff for corporate events. And, he had a sexy fly job. And he no longer does that job because he's a full-time care provider for his son. They have 3 kids now, but his son has really profound special needs. And so he spends every day and night of his life caring for his son and his family. So he went from being somebody who, lived this jet setter lifestyle to just being somebody that's up all day and night, just helping a person that can't do a lot for themselves right now. So it went from being very cool outwardly and sexy to not so much, and I've learned a lot from being friends with him. Just the way that he's submitted to, even like he came into Islam wanting to study and learn all this stuff and become fluent in Arabic and be able to recite all this Quran and everything. And I mean, his schedule just doesn't allow for that. But it's like this path is about submitting to what is the course that the divine has written for me in a beautiful way. And so his care, his love and service of his family is his path, and it's just one of many paths. We all have several paths. But he still has all of this leftover, he still has all these like points and status with a particular hotel chain. And so he's always saying, whenever I travel, he's always like, please let me get you a hotel room. But I'm usually traveling with 4 rooms, 5 rooms. And so I'm not going to be like, and these are hotel rooms that, he and his family are still able to go on a vacation every year because of the fact that he gets these free hotels, and they're nice. It's not just any old hotel. It's like it's a nice hotel. And so I'm not going to just use up 5 rooms that could be used by his family, But this time he was like, yo, let me get you a hotel. And I said, all right, brother, this is the time that I need it. I really do need it. This was an extremely expensive proposition for us, And, I just was getting to a place where after a year of not having any shows, now I've got a bunch of shows. I almost have too much stuff going on, and I'm accepting a lot of these things because, like, I do need to become more financially stable. And shows and events are usually the most surefire way to do that. So I'm taking all these shows and I'm traveling way more than I want to. I don't want to be running all over the place. Although when I'm at the event, I love the event. I love doing the concert. I love being with y'all. I love being on stage. I love being with my artist friends on tour. I love speaking. I love being with our teachers and our communities. I love all that stuff. I really genuinely love it. But also, man, I want to be in Istanbul like this. I love this place. And, but he said, man, let me get you a hotel. I said, yeah, man. So he did. And it was a nice hotel. And we're in downtown Chicago, me and my daughter, on the 40th floor. And we just came from this beautiful event on the south side of Chicago in the middle of it all. And we get back to this beautiful, fancy downtown hotel. And I told my daughter, say, hey, take your headphones off right now. Like, listen. And you can hear in the distance, pop, 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 pop. In Istanbul, those would be fireworks because people shoot off fireworks for every reason, for no reason, all the time. Like big, like firework that you would go to the fireworks or like at the fair or something like that. People will shoot them out, especially because we live right by the Bosphorus. People will shoot fireworks over the Bosphorus 2 nights a week, all year round. And so she's saying, oh, they do fireworks? I was like, no. That's a full-on gun battle that you're hearing. Like you're hearing like multiple automatic weapons firing at each other. Like you're hearing a full-on gunfight in a residential neighborhood in Chicago. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes. I said, wait, watch in a couple minutes. Because, when you come from that environment, you know the difference. My wife is from the Bronx and we were talking about this and my wife said, it's like the crack of the bat, when you hear a home run, if you're a baseball fan. And if you come from environments like that, when it's gunshots. And so I said, just wait a few minutes, you're going to hear a bunch of sirens. And sure enough, I mean, the shooting stopped and then you just heard all these sirens rushing to that area. So that was one of the things we heard on this 27th night of Ramadan. And I was exhausted. I've been extremely exhausted from all of this traveling and all of this, like trying to figure out how to get all this stuff done. And so my daughter went to sleep and I just took a nap and I said, I'm gonna get up in the middle of the night. These nights of Ramadan are about praying and are about, standing and remembering Allah and reciting and reading the Quran and things like that. And so I said, I'm going to take a little nap and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my thing. And for the first time, I really cried about what was happening. My family being separated, the uncertainty of it all. Anyone, if you've ever been through a crisis, people always say the same thing, that the most difficult part of it is the not knowing. And that's the thing that being connected to the divine It doesn't completely alleviate it necessarily. It just depends on your level of connection and your state with Allah, your station with God, your closeness to the divine. Because there are people that are completely unrattled. I mean, our teacher, Sheikh Mohammed Jailani, who's from the Gambia, it's like he's not rattled by anything. He sees it all come in. He sees, because there's a relationship and like a station with the divine, with Allah, with the author of it all. That's like, he's not rattled by any of it. But most of us do experience some just like, how's this going to happen? And that longing and yearning makes us closer and draws us closer to Allah. And it makes us know, there have been times when I thought I might be killed. There's times where I thought I might, go to prison in other countries, And in those times, it's like, I don't try to put myself in those situations, but when they happen, there's an awareness, like there's such a direct conversation and connection between me and Allah, that when it's over, I'm a little bit sad, just in the sense that like, all right, now I'm going to go back to my regular walk, which has an element of sleepwalking. It's got an element of denial. It's got an element, there's an element of it, And that's what all this spiritual practice is partially about. We worship Allah because Allah is worthy of worship, and it's because it's what we're created to do. And it's the thing that makes us completely human. Not that someone isn't human that doesn't worship. I just got to be careful about making sure that no one that's listening feels like I'm discrediting or discounting you, because I promise you I'm not. And that's why we do it. But also, what it does is it fosters a bond between us and the divine. It trains us for these moments, But we still have our human experience. And people tell you that the not knowing is the difficult part. And the thing about faith as a practice and as a reality and as a conditioning of the spirit, is it does prepare a person for that, But I was like, this 27th night, I said, this is the time, like, I am going to let it all out. And I cried to Allah, and I said, and it's like, I'm going to ask it for exactly what I want, because I know that it's easy for you to do. I said, I want to get the news that we can go home, and I want to get that news today. I'm going to stay up and cry and pray and worship and recite and all of these things until the morning prayer. Then I'm going to make the morning prayer, and then I'm going to go to sleep for a while. And when I wake up, I'm asking for you to settle this and solve this. And so I went to sleep. I finished my nightly kind of routine, went to sleep about 6 a.m. I woke up around 11, and I picked up my phone and I went to WhatsApp. And I saw one of our brothers here in Istanbul, brother named Muhammad Tahiri. Shout out to Tahiri, because, he was one of the people that I called when I was in this situation. And so was our brother Omar Barzinji. There's a few people that I reached out to. There's a brother named Mir Weiss that helps us year round and helps communities year round and families, with their papers, with their immigration, with their all of that stuff. And all these people have been extremely helpful. But it just so happened that, when you go on WhatsApp, you can see that there are like who's messaging. And so I saw that Tahiri was recording a message or, typing. I can't remember. But so I went to our conversation, and it says typing. And I just got a message that came in that said, Habib Ali Habibi, my beloved Ali, I'm about to call you. I need you to answer your phone. And so I just typed out, I said, I'm here. So he called with somebody on three-way, and it was just a person on three-way calling, and they said, your family's residency has been approved. We're going to deliver your new residence ID cards today or tomorrow. And this is done. You can come home. And so I said, well, I need to get something in writing. There's a document that you can get, because there's no way to get us the cards in time. But I said, I need something in writing saying that our residency is approved. And once I have something in writing, I'll book our trip back to Istanbul. So I spent that day, hung out with my brother Mansour Panawala, who, like, we had stayed at his house earlier. And his father's in the hospital, and so I took an Uber out there, and I, saw them, and we hung out with their family for the day and for the night, and it was really beautiful. And I think this is the point where I have to say that the outpouring of love from different sections of the community, people reaching out, offering their care, their concern, but people offering their homes. I mean, my brother Willem Abdullah in the Netherlands, responded immediately when I said we were going to Amsterdam. And there's people that reached out that I don't know if I'm supposed to say that are living there now. But there's a very prominent rapper who lives in Amsterdam now. And another prominent rapper that I don't even know told him, hey, I heard Brother Ali's in Amsterdam, and I know you live in Amsterdam now. And so this very prominent artist, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that he lives in, I don't know. I just don't know. But he hit me up, and I haven't heard from this person in years. We're not the dearest of friends, although we've always been cool, and I respect this person tremendously. Hit me up and said, hey, I heard you're in Amsterdam. Me and my wife just moved here. Let me know. Like, what do you need? Come through. Like, I'll come pick you up. I heard you and your daughter are having trouble. I'll come pick you up. And it's like, I don't even know this person like that. I just so happened to be talking to Sage Francis, and he was like, hey, please come stay with us. If you need to be out of the country for 3 months, come stay with us. You can be here. Your daughter can be here. You got all the food you need. And we were just talking about the money he made on the Atmosphere tour, and he had told me this specific number. He's like, you know how much I made, and it's all yours, whatever you need. Immediately. He was the first person to respond because we just happened to be talking at that time. But people from all over the world hit me up. My brother Willem Abdullah said, okay, well, I'm traveling to the Gambia. We had been together in the Gambia last year during the last 10 days of Ramadan. He said, I'm on my way back to the Gambia, but my family is still at our house. It's about an hour train ride. You go there, you have a place to be, you have food, you have a community around you. If you need a car, you have a car, whatever you need. And that's true. These people mean that. And I just had people offering all types of support. There are fans that just was like, hey, I live in Arizona. I know we don't know each other, but if you need a place to stay, I have a room. You and your daughter can come stay here. And people mean that. And that was deeply moving because, there was another time right before we left America where I was one of those times where it's like, man, you do all this community stuff and you think the community might come through for you, and they didn't. And it's because it was a different situation. It was a different situation. It was like the cancel culture thing, which really shows me like how insidious the cancel culture thing can be, having experienced it, having been both a person that's outspoken for the things that cancel culture proclaims to be about, but then also having been, wrapped up in this like swirling kind of thing that happens within communities where people just denounce each other, just destroy each other's reputation. And, in any case, that was a time when I was hoping that maybe the people in community would be like, hey, and they didn't. And I realized they couldn't. But at this particular time, when what we needed was a refuge, and I say this knowing that there are, like, it might sound silly compared to what the people in Palestine are going through, or what the people in Ukraine are going through, or what the people in Sudan or the Congo are going through, to say that we're refugees. It's when you're staying in a hotel and, a beautiful hotel or whatever. But the truth is, like, my family couldn't be together, and we didn't have anywhere to be. We didn't have our own place to be, and we're people that have only contributed and have only followed all the laws and tried to do everything right and tried to contribute in whatever way we can, to be not allowed to come back to our place just because immigration is a political issue, and and immigrants are political footballs. You know, it's just really, it's, you know, there's a certain thing that happens there where, like, I'm not in control of my family. I'm basically being treated like a criminal. People that are in prison, or people that are exiled, or people that are, deportation is usually something that, at least in theory, is supposed to be related to, like, you violated the agreement. But there are so many people that the overwhelming majority of people that are called immigrants, or people that, leave one place to go to another place, it's because they have a reason that they need to do that. And, so in any case, we finally got word. We booked our flight back to Istanbul. And, there's all the stuff of rushing to get to the airport. And, we've just been in airport after airport. And so we get back to Istanbul, and we've got the papers that say that that our residency has been approved. But that needs to be looked up in the computer. And when we arrived in Istanbul, we arrived here on the last night of Ramadan, right as the sun was setting. So it's like Ramadan is over. And I can't lie, it really breaks my heart. Like, I really wanted this Ramadan. Like, I need it. I look forward to it. You know what I mean? It's like, if you've never been a Muslim fasting Ramadan, you don't know. And I hope you get to know that someday, because it's the most beautiful thing. It's the most unsuspecting, most beautiful thing that you could possibly imagine. And I see all these posts, and, people are posting their photos from Eid. And I see other people that maybe know them posting and saying, like, you're not even that religious. It's like, man, I'm sorry you don't know that feeling, but I hope you do someday. But Ramadan is like this beautiful reunion with, like, I know people are like, well, you're not this Muslim, you're proclaiming. I know that. And because it's hard, it's very difficult to be that. But something about that month of Ramadan, it like pours into the spirit. It makes the spirit strong and the ego weak for a change. When everything else in our society is just feeding the ego and making the ego strong and the spirit weak. I mean, there's huge industries, like so much of what influencers are doing is trying to tell you that they've got the secret for making your discipline and your spirit and your regimen and your, all this other stuff strong. And, like, just your laziness, your corniness, your inconsistencies, your contradictions, the ego, to make that weak, the worst part of us, But all of these industries and all of this political stuff is fueling and fueled by ego, whether it's individual ego that says, like, I'm better than other people and I should just, placate all of my appetites, and, me and my identity and my whatever, we're just better, we're good, and it's not based on virtue, or it's collective, or it's, there's this, like, this political thing. It's like, man, this is just the collectivized ego, this, like, nationalist thing. And, when you, especially once you live in multiple societies and see it show up, you see it show up in the people that are just like, the nationalists here is no different from the nationalists at home, except that the nationalists at home, there are some other complicating factors, but it's just like, our value is in the fact that we're from a particular group. And it's not necessarily about virtue. Like, we get rid of those virtues. We should feel good about our group because our group should give us a sense of what it means to be us. And it's universally known that, like, to really be connected to true culture is about generosity. It's about caring for people. It's about hospitality. It's about, our honor and our dignity is in how hospitable we are, and in the fact that we hold to certain virtues. And if we betray those virtues, then we've betrayed our group. And to the degree our group is valuable to the degree that, and our status within it is completely related and contingent upon our upholding of these virtues, because that's positive. And people should have a positive feeling about their group. But it's like, well, what is it? And that's the problem inherently with whiteness. Where like whiteness is not the same as being German, as being Irish, as being Greek, as being Italian, as being, BK has a real connection in his heart to being Italian and Irish, and that's dope to me, But the idea of BK wanting to produce a podcast, my partner and all this stuff, we bonded because when we first met, when we were 20 years old, it's like, man, we do not have an allegiance to this whiteness thing, because whiteness just means that like our group is valuable just because we're us, and it's not associated with virtue. There are not white virtues. Whiteness is there are not virtues associated with that identity, with that particular identity. It's like whatever we do is right because we're us. And like any dirty thing that we need to do to gain power so that like might makes right, any dirty thing that we need to do to get power is necessary, justified, of course, like this is what we have to do. There's no other way. You have to do whatever thing, and that, to me, that's the epitome of it. That's the pinnacle of it. And the idea that, our group identity, divorced of like meaning and virtue in anything other than the fact that we're us. And if we just get rid of these others, then we could thrive and be us and be great. And with the Turks, it's like, man, I travel the world and I see how you're treated when you go to other places. And it's disgusting. Like when Turks go to Germany, they're not treated well. And when they go to Europe, they're not treated well. And when they're in America, they're not treated well. It's like y'all aren't treated well. And why were those people leaving Turkey? And, so here we are now trying to come here. And it's, it's just all this political stuff. So in any case, we get back there and we have to go right back to the places where my daughter was traumatized. And it's starting to mirror the same process, because we get there and they make a phone call and it's not updated in the general system yet that our residency is approved. So they're going through the exact same process, like steps that led to my daughter being threatened with deportation and having to sleep in a hallway with no food and no access to anything and not being able to charge her phone. And so, I mean, they were just trying to, send her to Amsterdam, where it's like, what am I supposed to do? And it's mirroring all those same steps. You go to give your person your passport, the person says, Ali Bey, your passport is good, your daughter's is not. You go to this place, you go to a police kiosk. And I mean, there's just no order. It's just chaos. There's a bunch of people over there that are all trying to do the same thing. There's no lines. You know what I mean? Everyone's just, you have to kind of push your way to the front of the line, because that's what everybody is doing, because there's no organization, there's no line, there's no process. And I always say, man, you travel around the world, you learn some things about your own culture. There's a lot that the pre-modern world and the Eastern world has right. The Muslim world has right that my original society and people don't. But man, everybody's right about something. And I always say, like, the West is right about lines. Like, man, just the chaos of people trying to all get off an airplane at the same time, or all trying to get to a buffet, in Mecca to set, people just pushing, and it's like, man, it just causes these situations that are like, man, my culture is right about something. And yeah, lines. So in any case, we're going through this whole process, and we were there for about 3 hours. For 3 hours, we don't know if we're getting in. Again, it's the not knowing. And then finally, after 3 hours, we find a person who seems to know that we're coming. Again, I don't know which friends of mine made phone calls even to them. Or even not friends of mine. I'm told that the people that helped in our situation are people that are just admirers of one of my teachers, my spiritual mentor, like a father to me, Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah. Our brother Tahir, he said, yeah, some of the people that helped, they have a soft spot for Dr. Umar Abdullah, Dr. Umar Farouk Abdullah, not Dr. Umar Abdullah Johnson. It's interesting how similar their names are. Very different guys. But yeah, so, and there's oftentimes I travel. I get harassed all the time. I get bothered when I'm traveling all the time. And so often I show people my passport and they're like, oh, you're Ali Newman. And like, yeah, they've been waiting for me. And there was someone there who said, you're Ali Newman? And he was like, okay, hold on. He was like, Skandiyok. Like, there's no problem. You know what I mean? And I'm like, tamam. You know what I mean? Kolay gelsin. Abi kolay gelsin. Just like, man, thank you. May your job be easy. Because he looked at me and with recognition in his eyes, he's like, oh, you're Mr. Ali. Yes. Okay. No problem. Just give me a minute. And so a few minutes later, he handed us a slip of paper. This is the line you got to go through. And like, we're here. And then it's an hour cab ride and we got to come home and, we surprised our daughters. Now the challenge is I'm only home for 2 days. I thought I was going to be home for almost 2 weeks. I'm home for 2 days. I turned right back around tonight. I'm recording this on Tuesday morning, our time in Istanbul. Tuesday night, I go back and get on a plane. And I head back to America to do Reggae Rise Up in Arizona with Dilated Peoples and Damian Marley and a bunch of other great bands. And then we start our tour with DJ Abilities. We were supposed to, the markets that we're doing on this tour are not big markets for us. They're big streaming markets, but they're not big like concert going markets on the East Coast. And I don't know why that is, like New York is one of my biggest streaming cities when I look at like analytics on Spotify and stuff. But in terms of how many people come to the show, it's just not a lot. And I know that going in, and like, it's not a big money making thing, but usually a tour where you're doing a bunch of shows where you're not making much money, there's usually a couple of pillar gigs that you want to put in there. And so Reggae Rise Up is a festival and they're paying, like a festival, and I really appreciate that. Then there'll be a show at Ice House in Minneapolis at the end that if everything goes like we think it probably should, that should be a profitable one. But then there was another college show during the course of that tour. I can't say the name of it right now because we may have legal stuff, but that was one of the kind of like pillars of the budget that was going to make it so that I don't lose money going on tour. It's very expensive to go on tour, especially if you treat your people with some decency, which I try to do, pay them decently, we're all grown men, like we're in our 40s, so like the idea of people being able to have their own hotel rooms, and have some privacy and things like that, staying in decent hotels, things like that. It's very expensive, traveling in a way that's comfortable, renting equipment and all this kind of stuff so that people don't have to bring their personal gear. Like DJ Abilities shouldn't have to bring his personal turntables because they get beat up on the road. So it's expensive to rent turntables, it's expensive to all this stuff, extremely expensive. And these are things that come out of your pocket, not to mention manufacturing the merch and shipping the merch and, all of that stuff. And so the college gig, we were confirmed. We actually built and like structured and routed a lot of the tour around this college show. They just called us to tell us that they're canceling that they're not going to have us. And it's because of the political situation. They never tell you that. But my booking agent, who's really amazing, she said, this is a discrimination thing. And she said it's because they're worried. Like, she said, and this is a Jewish woman. It's a very nice, really, young Jewish woman. She said, they know that you're going to get on stage and say something about the Palestinians. Like you're going to say something to affirm the humanity of the Palestinians. And I might not say it in a way that she like loves to hear it said, but she has always said, she's like, Brother Ali is a human rights advocate. And when you do that, you got to say things in the way that is strong. And so she's always fought for my right to say things that she might not even like. I don't know. I don't know if she likes the way I say it or not. But she's like, you have a right to say that, and somebody needs to be saying that, and you're saying it from a perspective of being a human rights advocate. And so I'm going to fight for you. and she's fought for me in situations where, it's not because she's making a huge commission off of everything that we do, but she fights for my right to say what I'm saying, and these are the Jews that I know, you know what I mean? These are the Jewish people that I was raised around. Jake One's dad, for example, that was, a free like pro bono lawyer for the Black Panthers. You know what I mean? These are the people these are the type of Jews that I was raised around, and I could go down a long list of people. Unjust is one of the main ones, and his father. So it's like, man, so yeah, we lost one of the big shows. We lost one of the shows that was like, one of the financial pillars of the tour. And so she said, we will pursue legal action with them, but it's because they don't want the scrutiny of having someone say something pro-Palestinian on their campus. It's the only reason. There's no other reason that they pulled out. So I have to turn right around and go. And so I came home and was like, all right, well, at least we can do Eid. And I came home, and this often happens with people that go, travel, stress. It's like your mind and your body know. So I came home and my body just shut all the way down. Like I just got almost like a migraine in my stomach. And again, I'm recovering from surgery too. Like I'm supposed to be resting, and I'm supposed to be, my daughters haven't been to Eid. Like we didn't really do Eid stuff. I think we're going to try to do something today if I can. But I was like doubled over in pain and just falling asleep all the time. And, and yeah, we turn around. But man, I'm just going to be very, very honest. I always am. As soon as I land and as soon as I'm on the tour and as soon as I will be very happy to be there. I know that I would, but I've never wanted to cancel a tour so bad in my life. I could cry and I'm like, I know that like emotionally, I have not processed what's been happening in the last couple months. I haven't had the space to, and that's not a pattern for me. I've learned that like, I do have to look for those opportunities and to really sit with and process that stuff. And I will. But I haven't been able to. I have not processed the feeling of being in that office and having some person who's not paying attention and not listening yet another time. And I'm saying like the way that people feel about police and about these like authoritarian figures that have guns and have the right to put their hands on you and have the right to dictate to you physically where your family can be, We were driving in a car while we were in America with a person who's not white, and they got pulled over because the car went 2 miles over the speed limit, got pulled over, you know what I mean? And like all of this stuff, and just thinking about our safety, there are people that like have these experiences over and over and over again, and they have been having them generationally. That's just like, yeah, somebody in uniform, this like, authoritative person that's, has the ability and the power to control where my body is and where my family is, and they have the right to physically restrain us and physically force us to be deported from a country. I mean, just think about what that means, to be deported, and for them to say this, like, I know that, like, and when he's saying, are you stupid and all this kind of stuff, it's like, this guy has zero respect for me. He's not seeing either one of us as human beings. He's not listening. And we're one phone call away from people coming in with uniforms and guns and zip ties and handcuffs. And like, I've been in this situation. And if he doesn't like how I'm talking to him, he could physically take me to one place and physically take my daughter to another place. And then she's in there just completely at their mercy. We're one phone call away from that. I haven't processed that yet. And I'm probably not going to be able to until after I come home from this tour. But I have to say, my man DJ Abilities called me. And I I messaged him and I just was like, yo, man, I'm so sorry. I have not been putting, the communication's been bad. And he said, man, I totally understand. He said, can we get on a 5-minute phone call? He's like, is it okay if we just talk in real time, just real quick? So I got on the phone and I got to say, man, Abilities was like, yo, man, yeah, I was frustrated not being able to communicate with you, but I want you to know that like, I am so excited for this tour. And he's like, can I just tell you a few of the things that I have planned for our set? And we ended up talking for over an hour. He's like, yeah, this transitions into this, and I want to scratch that. And like, what if we do this song and we flip it to this beat? And then this goes, that is in the same key as this, and this is the same tempo as that. And like, man, not everybody's going to get this reference, but I want to scratch this. And then I got this thing, and I'm like, yo, like it just made me excited for the tour. And yeah, man, Max, DJ Abilities, and me and Abilities have not been best friends. Like we've always been cool. I've always been happy to see him. And we do have an episode of this podcast dropping very soon with DJ Abilities. Shout to my brother, Don Kufi, who has been, he did in the last 10 days of Ramadan what I wanted to do. Don Kufi got married and then he did itikaf, which means you actually move into the mosque for the last 10 days of Ramadan. So he got married, he went on his honeymoon, and then he went into itikaf. So it's like, yeah, this DJ Abilities episode that's almost been done for a long time. Give me 1 second, my love. You can come sit down. I just have to finish recording. You can come sit down if you want. Good morning. Good night then. Assalamu alaikum. Come sit down. I just have to finish recording, okay? I'll be done in 2 minutes. Sit right there. I love you. I love you. I'm so happy to see you. Today we go out for Eid, yeah? Mm-hmm. Inshallah. Okay, shh. You be quiet. You be quiet. So we just finish, okay? All right. So the little ones are just starting to get up. Yeah, he made me excited. He made me excited for it. But Don Kufi, we have that episode coming. Alhamdulillah, inshallah ta'ala. But I mean, you'll hear us, me and Abilities talk for a couple of hours on that episode. And maybe we'll just drop it midweek or something like that because the tour is starting soon. But he said, man, I just know you needed some good energy. He's like, I realized that I was not going to get the type of communication going into it that I wanted. And he's like, and I did feel some frustration for that, but I realized you're not doing this because you don't respect me. You're not doing this to be difficult. It's just such a grown, mature conversation to be having with someone that is so self-aware and is able to communicate on that level. And he said, I just decided, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this with Ali, but I can do this. And so he just poured hours and hours into this. And he said, man, I just wanted to give you this good energy that we're excited and this is going to be dope. And it's so valuable. It's so extremely valuable. So there's still some stuff to iron out. Some of our family got a year of residency. Some only got approved for 6 months. So it's still not totally coherent, but how are some of us what is that? How do you get, it's a family. You know what I mean? Some of us got 6 months, some of us were supposed to leave in 6 months. Well, it's just, I could go all into the details of the political thing as I understand it, but I probably don't understand it completely. And it's not as interesting. But I will say our family is together. It was really scary, right? And really sad when we didn't know if we could come home. But it was so happy when we came home. Yeah. My 7-year-old is here. And it's just beautiful, just being able to hug my kids and hug my wife. And, my 16-year-old is like another parent to the 2 little ones. And so it was really tough to be apart. And I know that it's nothing compared to what so many people in the world go through, but it definitely was a very real taste of that, So we're grateful. Thank you all so much for your messages of love and support. It really touches us. It really means a lot to us. Those of you who said, hey, I don't have much, but come stay with us. I know you meant that. And I'm not too proud to take you up on that, And in all of this, I do really feel like, man, the community was there to support us. And, you know, with the past experience that I referenced earlier, I just realized that the people couldn't support us. There's not much you can do when that's happening, you know. But when people can offer their homes, when people are like, I'll be less than comfortable I'll give up the privacy of me and my family being alone in our house together to have house guests that, like, you know, I'm telling people we're kicked out of the country for 3 months and they're saying like, yo, just come live with us. I know people meant that, you know, and I'm very grateful. This has been sponsored by the Zakat Foundation. Go give them some money, even if it's $5. Please just do that right now. Also, there's a caravan that you can join if you want to. The top tier of the caravan are called the Trailblazers. It's like wayfarers and trailblazers. And, you know, they're beautiful people that have kept us going. Yeah, very grateful to you all. We're going on tour, brotherali.com. We'll get you everything. We got a new album out. The vinyl is almost sold out for the new album. Like we're going to have to do another pressing of the vinyl. So if you're on the fence about it, and it came out beautiful, it's finally shipping. It, you know, the vinyl got held up at the border. I mean, all this international stuff is a mess right now. You know that. And the vinyl got held up at the border. So people didn't get there. It was a pre-order. So people ordered it months ago and they're like, why haven't I got my record yet? And we said it would ship during March, and it did. You know, it's April 1st today, and they've all shipped out. So like your stuff did ship in March, which is what we said, you know. And shout out to BK, who, I mean, countless hours of getting that vinyl ready. Shout out to the good people at Mellow Music, you know, because they also shipped a lot on their end and they quarterbacked so much of this stuff. And, you know, we'll have a whole thing about that as well. But so if you want to do that, we're going on tour. brotherali.com/events. The VIP is open. VIP means you come early and you spend an hour before the show in a small, intimate setting, just hanging out with me before the show. You know what I mean? People keep saying like, can you sign this? Can you sign? I'm sorry if it feels like I'm trying to upsell you. I'm not. It's just that where I'm at with how things are going, it's best for me to not be out there trying to talk to everybody after they've been drinking and everything else, which is what I used to do. My rest, I need to protect my rest and also just my health. You know what I mean? I was getting sick all the time on tour when I did that. So the way that we do it now, there is an extra cost associated with it. If you can't afford it, I understand. But also those people that pay for that extra thing help us keep the general admission tickets low. Like, man, just being in America, I'm like, yo, man, everything in this country costs $50. Like an Uber somewhere costs $50. A meal costs $50. It's crazy. And my tickets are still $20 and $25. It's like the tickets, anybody that wants to come see my show can come see my show. And I really love to keep it that way. But part of why we're able to do that, like what supplements the budget so I can pay for the van and rent the equipment and get the backdrop made and all that stuff, is the VIPs and that VIP experience. So the people that do that, you just come and hang out with me for an hour in a small, intimate group, in a small, intimate setting. I usually perform a song or two, but then we just hang out and talk. If you want to take pictures or you want me to sign something, that's the time to do it. So go to brotherali.com/events. Please sign our mailing list. If we're anywhere near you, this is going to be a really special set, just from hearing Abilities talk about what he put together. But I'm about to head to Arizona and put the set together and get ready for this tour. And we'll see you soon. We love you. We appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.